Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Ferg's Footy Fanfare, episode 6. I'm Jay. I'm here with Ned. How you going, mate?
Yeah, not too bad, Jay. Yourself?
Yeah, good, mate. Good. So we're recording at the moment on the Saturday, which means that we are a couple of games already through round 7. But as usual, we're going to begin to review round 6. So the first game that we had was Geelong-Brisbane. Ned, how did you find that?
Yeah, Geelong pretty much won that in the third quarter. It's all it really took. Brisbane were very impressive in the first half, but really after half time it was just all Geelong, really.
Yeah, I find it interesting that the game plan that Geelong decided to play in the first half, they were really slow, lots of uncontested marks. It's as if they had a game plan that, might come up well against Richmond, but that's not going to beat Brisbane. And then they come out in the third quarter and then a completely different team. They ended up scoring 45 points in the third quarter, which almost would have beaten the Brisbane Lions alone. So makes you wonder what Chris Scott's thinking and what he's doing if he's able to get that out of his team for one quarter and then continually decides to play slow and, uncontested short kick stop football. I had Danger played really well. I think that he kind of showed his class in that game, and Lachie Neale still got out plenty of times and was able to get a fair amount of the ball. Not as potent, no. And I think that's where they really were able to get ahead in the third quarter by stopping their key players in the midfield.
All right, then we'll move on to
Yeah,
the
beautiful.
Hawthorn game.
Yeah, I didn't get a chance to watch this. Did you get much from it, or?
I watched a little bit here and there. I didn't tune in too heavily, but yeah, Hawthorn. Just by what I saw, Hawthorn looks like they were trying to play key things off, but they just somehow couldn't manufacture a score.
Yeah, it's going to be even tougher for them now with Patton out for the next couple of weeks. So I'm not too sure who they've brought in this week. They might have brought in O'Brien, perhaps. But
I'm not sure.
I think that their biggest issue is struggling going forward now. They've brought in Mitch Lewis this week. They've also brought in Darren Minchington along for Paul Puopolo, but we'll get to that later on. In terms for, do you think that it's almost time that Hawthorn begin to consider a rebuild, or you reckon they've still got a chance, if they're able to play their best football, they're a chance of contending this year?
I think they've still got to go for it this year. I think, it's such an open table at the moment. I think you can't really consider rebuilding when you're, 13th on the ladder and they're really well equal 8th at the moment. So I don't think you can be looking at a rebuild when they're still right, really mathematically in the hunt.
And it opens up because of the tightness of the competition this year. All it will take is 3 or 4 good rounds, and then, with how tight the ladders, that can boost you into that, positions that look like it's anywhere from 5th to 8th. So,
yeah.
Next game that we have is Fremantle St Kilda. That was very painful to watch. I thought that it exposed St Kilda that game. If you're able to stop St Kilda moving the ball quickly, then they're not going to score. I think, they managed 7 goals in the first quarter, and then they managed 5 for the rest of the game, and I think 3 of those came within a 5-minute period in the last quarter. So if you're able to manage them moving the ball really quickly, and if you force them to kick long and down the line, then they're toast. And I thought Fremantle did really well doing that. Fremantle wanted the ball more. Fremantle worked harder to get in positions. They worked better around the ground. And probably at the end of the day, they deserved to win that game, I would have thought. So it'll be interesting to see now. How do you think they'll go? They've won their last 2 on the trot in Queensland. They're back at home. How do you think they're going to be able to use that momentum in terms of being able to win games at home now?
I don't think they'll win this week, but I think, to be able to snag they played 5 games up there, so to snag 2 wins out of that's not bad. Just looking at who they have coming up. So Geelong at Optus, which Geelong have not won at Optus yet.
Credit to Josh Critchlow for that stat. I didn't know that before he
Yeah,
commented on it.
neither. Yeah. I think they'll get a bit of confidence, but a couple of tough games coming up. It's going to be hard, especially without the best player in the game.
Yeah, it was. I found it amazing how they were able to still do so well. They had their main ruckman out for over half the game on Saturday, and they had Nat Five playing in the goal square for the second half of that game. And there wasn't one instance, maybe with a couple minutes left in the game, where it looked like they might get overrun. They were really good, and St Kilda were really poor.
Few players went missing on your side's behalf.
Yeah, I think the midfield, they just weren't as hungry. And I think that really showed. They were second to the contest pretty much all around the ground. And they weren't willing to go in and get the hard ball. And once you start doing that at an AFL level, you need to at least provide a contest. And St Kilda did nowhere near enough to make sure that the ball would stay in. Next game, we've got West Coast versus Adelaide, where West Coast won by 33 points.
Yeah, that was a bit of... I didn't watch all of it, but I tuned in every now and then. But I watched I watched pretty much all the first quarter. And Adelaide were right in the hunt in the start, but they couldn't score.
They really do struggle with scoring. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was like against Fremantle. They had a lot of the play, but they just weren't able to do any damage with it.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at their last previous weeks, they scored 34, 34, 46, 29, and then Derby they scored 35. So since round one, they haven't kicked a score over 50.
Just a question about scoring. I was actually thinking about this during the week. You know how the old saying was, first to 100 usually wins?
Yep.
And, 100's usually a winning score. What would you say is a winning score with the shorter quarters now?
I think if any team makes it to 80, that's enough. But if you look at the stats these days, there's really not a lot of teams getting to 80. I would say I'd probably be confident enough in saying that it's first to 70 would win if you're going to treat it in that kind of methodology.
Yeah.
I know that, for example, that's Fremantle-St Kilda game. Fremantle got to 70 first. That was enough for them. I think if a team's going to get to 70, then they're going to be the winners. And just based on that question, do you still think that, I think it's Lee Matthews that has the goals and minutes theory? So 3 goals down with 3 minutes left. Do you still think that's in play in today's game? Or?
Yeah, I always use that theory. Every time I'm watching, someone will say it's over. I'm like, no, they need 3 goals. There's 4 minutes to go.
I reckon it's great because sometimes that's all it takes.
I do preach that, especially now, like with the 666, how open it is.
Mm-hmm.
You can't actually flood a bloke back off you can't flood back or anything. So you've actually got to, you got one-on-ones.
That's right. And it seems with footy in 2020, there's a lot more ebbs and flows. Like there's a lot more, you're able to dominate for large parts and kick 3 or 4 quick goals on the trot. Yeah,
well, St Kilda did that against Fremantle. I reckon there was only about 5 minutes to go, and with 2 minutes to go, St Kilda they drew it level.
Yeah, no, that's right. So I still definitely think that theory is also alive and well in 2020 football. In terms of this week, once again, I think West Coast, in particular, probably them more so than Fremantle, having those last 2 wins is going to do them a world of good confidence-wise in going back to WA, especially seeing that they're probably seen as the better team and more likely to contend once we get to finals football. Next game, we have Melbourne and Gold Coast, where Melbourne won by 17 points. It's actually a good game, I found.
I didn't watch it, to be fair.
It was nice and tight, as we were expecting. I was struggling to pick a winner out of this. And Melbourne just kicked away in the last 10, 15 minutes of the game. But they showed that when they're able to get their midfield moving, they can be, and on target, they're quite a good team. It's 12 goals, 8 is a very competitive score, and that's going to win you most games of football. So, but in saying that, once again, Gold Coast didn't lower their colours by any stretch. They were also very competitive. They'll have a lot of positives to take out of it. They would have liked to have won, and they would really consider themselves a chance of winning this week as well. But
they really need to win this week, I reckon.
Yeah, they're showing them that they're showing the rest of the competition that they're quite competitive, and they're not really what we thought they might be at the start of the year, just a pass by and an easy 4 points off them.
Yeah.
Essendon, North Melbourne, where Essendon got up by 14 points. I personally didn't watch this game. I watched some highlights. It's hard to gauge where both teams are, I feel. Like North Melbourne's really struggling at the moment.
Yeah, just watching a bit of pre-game, pretty much like the start of the day's coverage of all the football on Fox Footy, and talking about Ben Brown struggling heavily, and North finding hard to score as well.
Yeah, and I was just about to say, I don't think that Ben Brown is going to make it difficult for him to excel with the game plan that North Melbourne is adopting at the moment, that long, slow up the line, 50-50 at the contest and hopefully just bang it forward. I think they'd like to move it a bit quicker when you've got an asset like Ben Brown in the forward line. But in terms of Essendon, if we had looked at this last night before they play, I would say that they're looking the goods.
Yeah, no, they don't.
No, not after the way they played last night, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Port Adelaide versus GWS. Your Tyler's mates getting the job done very well and proving that they are a team not to be reckoned with. Did you watch that one?
I watched in bits and pieces, but I watched most of the last quarter. And Port were awesome in that last quarter because it was quite neck and neck throughout the whole game, and Port were just able to get clear in that last quarter.
Yeah, to be honest, I didn't watch the game, and that's my bad because that was probably the game of the round. I should have tuned into that. I was a bit sick of footy after watching St Kilda play. I think that's a huge scalp that Port Adelaide needed, though. They had an easier draw at the start, so to be able to take down a team like GWS will do them the world of good. And
solidifies them in the in the real contenders category.
That's right, yeah. And you know what? They're still a game clear on top of the ladder, so it's going to take a little bit of stopping them in the meantime. Richmond, Sydney. How did you find this game, Ned?
Boring, very boring.
Yeah,
but
I had a lot of feedback on that, and given the terrain, very heavy rain and all that, still the second lowest scoring game in AFL since AFL inception.
Yeah, right. Yeah, win's a win, and so you'd take that. But yeah, it wasn't a very pretty game.
So, how did you feel the inclusions that you guys had done in terms of, you made quite a few changes due to injury?
I was pretty happy with most of them. Couple I sort of questioned, like I thought maybe Riley Collier Dawkins or, Paddy Nash would come into the side, but it didn't eventuate. But I think, we're going in unchanged this week, so I think we need to find some stability in our side. That's when we know we're playing well, when we just don't have to make any changes.
Yeah, and I guess the term stability is a really good segue into the next game where we have Carlton and Western Bulldogs. Can also be used in terms of just consistency, struggling to find out which team is going to play on the day, and having Carlton win by 52 points against Western Bulldogs. I don't think a lot of people would have expected that going into that game.
No, I can't say I really tuned into that. I tuned in later on in the game, but it was pretty much all over by then.
Yeah, well, I was keeping an eye on it throughout while I was working, and I saw that the Western Bulldogs were only 3 goals behind heading, into the later parts of the third quarter. Still thinking there might be some sort of comeback on, but once again, it just comes down to consistency, and Carlton were far the better team. And if they play that kind of football, then on a consistent, regular basis, then they should be playing finals footy. But their issue, along with a lot of other teams, is not getting it on a weekly basis. So that was the end of round 6. Given that we are recording on a Saturday, we've already had 2 games played this week, and we're having one being played at the moment. We'll start on the Thursday game. We had Geelong losing by 22 points to Collingwood. As you said before, this was another loss for Geelong at Optus Stadium. So does this become a concern for them now if they are to be playing in WA for the upcoming few weeks?
I think they'll get the chocolates eventually, but yeah, it's not a great stat to have, isn't it?
No, it's really not. I mean, it's just one of those things that would have been in the back of your head, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
I'd just like to say that my mate DeGoey was influential.
He's out now, though, isn't he?
Yeah, from what I've heard, he's got a tendon issue in his finger, and I believe he's out for about 6 to 8 weeks. So he'll require surgery on that. And but yeah, 5 goals in a game where your team scores 8. Yeah, it's a pretty good contribution. Even though he hadn't been that good for the games that he played that year, he'd been struggling for form this year. And then last night we had Essendon get done well and very convincingly by Western Bulldogs. Managed to catch on to that at any stage?
Nah, not really. Just had it on the background, but didn't really watch.
Yeah. Western Bulldogs dominated in the midfield when they started to take control. They were very slick, very quick ball movement. And they were also able to block up Essendon really well. I felt like Essendon had a lot of trouble. They didn't have anyone leading in their forward 50. They were all kind of standing back, waiting for the big bomb in. And I think that's where Western Bulldogs want you. They have a lot of defenders that are able to come off their one-on-one opponent and impact the contest. So I think if you allow Western Bulldogs to do that defensively, then they're able to counter off the back line. And once that happens, it's game over. And even more, it just talks about consistency. I think, Essendon, like we said, if this podcast had happened yesterday, I would have had them winning that. I know that you and I both tipped them, but each week it looks like a different team's running out.
Yeah.
So right now we've currently got GWS taking on Brisbane. It's going to be a good game, and at the moment it's tight. I've got Brisbane by a goal at the moment. How do you see this one going, Nettie?
I tipped the Giants, but Brisbane have just been able to hold a slight lead, and GWS finding it hard to kick back-to-back goals by the looks of it.
Yeah, it'll big out in Toby Green. We did our tips before I realised. I reckon that's almost a game changer.
Tim Taranto back in, though, is quite a handy inclusion.
Yeah, for sure. He's going to be an absolute jet for them. If not, he already is.
He won that BNF last year, didn't he?
Yeah, I think he did, actually. So he's going to be a bona fide star for the next 10 years, you'd imagine, easily. As you were saying, Ned, this is a huge game coming up in the twilight. We've got Sydney versus Gold Coast. Who have you tipped for this one and why?
I tipped Gold Coast because I think Gold Coast are a better side. But Gold Coast have actually had the wood over Sydney.
Oh, really?
Been able to, there was the Lockie Weller game where he kicked 3 or in the last quarter or whatever to give him the win. And I reckon they might have won there last year as well.
Yeah. Like you said, I think at this stage, Gold Coast have the better team. I know I keep harping on it, but the lack of tools that Sydney has is worrying to them. And not only that, but they've got Heaney out for the year.
And Kennedy out.
And Josh Kennedy and Sam Gray's been dropped as well. So I know they've got a couple of handy ins like Alir and Callum Sinclair. But at the end of the day, once you take some quality out, like Isaac Heaney and Josh Kennedy, who are two of the best three players there other than Tom Papley, I don't see how they can manage to get it done against Gold Coast, who were very competitive last week without Raul, and I think they won't be good enough to get over Gold Coast. Now, this will be an interesting game as well, Richmond, North Melbourne, because I am aware, as are you, that North Melbourne has the wood over Richmond.
Yeah, North generally face up quite well against Richmond. I don't think we've beaten them since 2017, I reckon.
And is there any reason for that in terms of the way that North Melbourne play? Or
North Melbourne have always been quite all over the last couple of years, they've been a big tackling team. So they must be able to find a way that stops us from being able to, really move the ball quickly by handball and all that.
Yeah.
I don't think they slip too many tackles. So,
and as we were saying just before, they've got that slow build up. They've got a lot of people that can take a contested mark. So I guess if they're on tonight, they're any chance. I've still tipped Richmond. A lot of respect for the premiers and all that. Although no changes, which I do find a bit different. I guess you don't really have anyone to bring in at the moment, do you?
Nah. Prestia and Nankervis did fly up, I think, yesterday or the day before, or they're going to fly up after having ankle surgery.
All right, next game that we have is Carlton and Port Adelaide. Man, this could be an interesting game as well. All comes down to which team rocks up. Hard to go against Port Adelaide, isn't it? Game clear.
Yeah. The way they played last week, they looked very good.
Yeah. It'll be, what do you think of, a good matchup there between Wiedering and Charlie Dixon? You think that Wiedering will get the job on him, or do you think it'll be passed to Liam Jones?
I think they'll take Wiedering to him. I think they'll want Jones freed up a little bit.
Yeah, he's been very good so far, Wiedering, but Jones has done a really good job as well. So they might, but it looks these days as if Wiedering takes the number one forward.
Yeah,
and he has every right to do so. From what he's done this year, he's been an outstanding, within that fullback all-Australian contention. But Port's getting the job done, I reckon. You also tipping?
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you there.
Hawthorn, Melbourne. A tight game.
Yeah, Melbourne were able to find some little bit of form last week, but I don't think they were overly convincing watching the highlights. And Hawthorn were terrible last week, but I think based on this, I just thought if Hawthorn bring their best, they'll beat Melbourne.
Yeah, it's the best way to look at it. Melbourne's got their most recent pick, number 2, Luke Jackson, in for Tom McDonald. I know that Aiden Sheedy's going to be a little bit upset about that, but at least it's not Oscar McDonald. He's still getting a gig. So he'll be running around causing chaos. Unfortunately for Melbourne fans, he'll be causing chaos for them instead of Hawthorn. I've got to go Hawthorn as well. I think they're going to get the job done. Better team on paper, and I think that Clarko will probably chuck a boot up their ass for the way that they handled themselves last week. Yeah, boy, oh boy, wowee, big call. I don't think Clarko will.
It's a children's program, mate.
I don't think Clarko's going to enjoy
that one out.
I think that he's going to dot his I's and cross his T's to make sure that his team rocks up tomorrow.
Well, especially when a few past Hawthorn greats have maybe suggested to move Clarko on, so he's under the pump.
It's actually a good question that I guess I can ask you is, do you think that Clarko will be reigning power with the if they do choose to rebuild?
I think he's signed a contract for the next 2 years, I think, from memory. I think you got to let him play out his contract at the moment, because for mine, he's still the best coach in the comp. Probably not. Well, he hasn't really got much to work with, I reckon, from a list perspective at Hawthorn. So I don't think he can. I don't think he can say that he needs to be moved on. But I think there will eventually come a time where they have to move him on. But I don't think it's anytime real soon.
Yeah. We've got the Western Derby next, Fremantle West Coast. Expecting anything out of the ordinary here?
Um, is West Coast winning ordinary?
I would
Is
say
that
so.
the ordinary?
I would say so,
I'm
yeah.
not expecting anything out of the ordinary.
Especially they got Luke Shuey back in, Nat Fife out. So
Yeah.
pretty big swings either way. Although Fremantle have been playing good football, they've been playing somewhat competitive football I think there was only one round where they were well and truly beaten, and other than that, they've always been somewhat in the contest. Just trying to see what game it is. Perhaps they've just been competitive. They lost to Port Adelaide. They weren't really in that game for much, but as we said, it's hard to go past West Coast given. And it looks like they're starting to get their midfield firing. Final game for the round, a bit of Monday night football.
Yeah.
Adelaide versus St Kilda. Show that to the masses as an absolute primetime game, mate.
Yeah, that'd be Adelaide's first primetime stint for the year, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I reckon. Man, I don't know what to say about this. I wouldn't count out anything given the way that both of these teams can play. We haven't seen much good football from Adelaide, but we've seen some pretty poor football from St Kilda as well. I've tipped St Kilda. I think St Kilda will win. I think it would have to take their absolute worst football to lose to Adelaide, but you just never know. Back at Adelaide's home ground. Do you know what the crowds are looking like in Adelaide at the moment? How many?
Oh, no, I'm not sure. What did they have before they went away? They had 2,000 or something, didn't
they? They had something like that for that showdown. But any Adelaide Oval game will have some form of atmosphere, unless you got the tarps out. But that's for Port Adelaide.
Yeah. I think St Kilda will win this one quite comfortably.
Yeah, we've got your mate Jack Sinclair on the extended bench.
Nice.
Hoping that he gets a gig. And Bryce Gibbs has also been called up as well.
Jeez,
well, that does...
Taking their time, haven't they?
Yeah, it's unbelievable how he doesn't get a gig. He must have pissed somebody off.
I think a lot of people have pissed a lot of people off at Adelaide.
Yeah, and then there's that as well. So, no, that'll do us for today, Ned. Thanks for joining us, mate. So it'll be interesting to see, especially with the ladder, teams that are starting to get on 4 wins. They're looking like they're tending to break away and form that top 8. I think we'll start to see, especially after this week and next week, we'll probably start to see your generic top 8 competitors, whether that's 11 or 12 teams. I think it'll really start to spread apart.
Yeah, I think by, what are we now, round 7?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think by the end of round 8, end of round 9, we'll start seeing it all really take shape.
Yeah, spot on. All right, Ned, good talking to you, mate.
Always a pleasure.
Thanks to anyone that's listening. You got any questions, be sure to flip them through and to like Ferg's Footy Fanfare on Facebook. Thanks, guys.